Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a congressional briefing on human rights defenders jailed in India for their activism. My name is Husna Vora, and I am an Indian-American Muslim activist, born and raised in Chicago, but with roots in Gujarat, India. As an Indian-American, I am deeply troubled by the state of affairs in India today, including the punishment and consequences that are imposed on those who dare to speak out for the truth. This briefing will also launch the Free Umar Khalid campaign, which aims to build support in the U.S. for the release of Khalid, who is one of the most prominent prisoners of conscience in India and who has been included in the Freedom of Religion and Belief Victim List by the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. On September 13, 2020, authorities arrested Khalid, a student activist, after accusing him of inciting communal violence through speeches in February of 2020. Khalid was targeted for leading peaceful protests opposing the Religious Discriminatory Citizenship Amendment Act, which seeks to disenfranchise India's 200 million Muslims. Khalid is unlawfully charged with offenses including, but not limited to, rioting, sedition, and promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion, race, place of birth, residence, etc. On April 15, 2021, a Delhi court granted Khalid bail. Khalid, however, was forced to remain in prison in light of other charges against him. Today's speakers will further underline the injustice that prisoners of conscience face and the reality of what speaking up for justice in India looks like. With that, I'd like to call Peter Friedrich up, author of Saffron America.
Last year, Sadhvi Ratambra came from India for speaking tour in the U.S. Her visit was partly organized by groups in America like the HSS, which is the U.S. wing of India's fascist RSS paramilitary, and the VHP America, which is the U.S. wing of the VHP in India, which is itself the religious wing of the RSS and previously was designated by the CIA as a religious militant outfit. So why, in a panel about political prisoners in India, am I opening by discussing Sadhvi Ratambra? You see, she exemplifies the current scenario in that country. Ratambra is the founder of the women's wing of the religious militant VHP in India. Her speeches have been described by one Indian scholar as the single most powerful instrument for whipping up anti-Muslim violence. In 1992, she was one of the main personalities responsible for inciting the mob demolition of the historic Babri Mosque in Uttar Pradesh, India. And the consequent mob demolition of that mosque was followed by anti-Muslim massacres throughout northern India. She faced multiple charges, all of which have been completely dropped under the auspices of the RSS-led government in Delhi. Instead of incarceration, she is now freely traveling around the globe, including to this country, to share her inflammatory rhetoric. Meanwhile, political prisoners of all types languish in Indian jails for the crimes of engaging in activism, academia, journalism, and the like. And I want to briefly give you a high-level overview of who these political prisoners are. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom currently lists 55 people as political prisoners in India, a number which is likely and unfortunately quite inaccurately low. Working within their framework, however, I want to put faces to about 4 of the names on the list. We start with Umar Khalid. He's an academic and activist. He was arrested in September 2020. His father is here with us today. Now, here's the relevance of this lady Sadhvi Ratambra in comparison to Umar Khalid. While he was organizing protests against India's Citizenship Amendment Act, a law which was criticized globally, including by the USCIRF, he was accused of inciting communal violence. The violence in question occurred in February 2020 in Delhi, with Muslims as the primary victims. Thus, this young student activist is incarcerated for participating in protests in which members of his own Muslim community were killed by the ruling authorities. While Sadhvi Ratambra is free to travel internationally as a spokesperson of the Hindu nationalist movement, which is targeting Umar Khalid's community back in India. He is held under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, also known as UAPA, and I will discuss the nature of this act shortly. Next up is Prabir Perkyasta. a journalist arrested this month under the UAPA. He is the founder of the popular alternative media outlet NewsClick and is among 46 journalists, editors, writers, and others connected with the website who were raided in the past 2 weeks. As a collective of journalists who wrote in his defense put it, it appears that the government is prosecuting journalism as terrorism, while holding him under, quote, vague assertions of some unspecified offense. Moving on now to Dr. Hani Babu. Arrested in July 2020, he is held under, yes, you guessed it, the UAPA. Dr. Babu is a Muslim Dalit Bahujan professor of English at Delhi University, whose only activism was successfully campaigning to implement the legally required affirmative action for caste-oppressed college students throughout India. He is the only Muslim in the Bhima Koregan 16, which is a group of 16 detained activists, academics, and journalists who, in the words of Amnesty International, have been vocal in their criticism of government policies and therefore have often been targets for the authorities. Several of these 16 have been released on bail after serving years in prison without ever being brought to trial, but Dr. Babu remains jailed. Notably, independent investigations have confirmed that purported evidence of terrorism used against some of the BK-16, like Dr. Babu, was planted on their laptops. One person whose laptop was hacked in that manner was the late Father Stan Swami, a Jesuit priest who had devoted his life to social activism among tribals and Dalits in India. He was arrested in October 2020 and held under the UAPA. As Father Swami stated shortly before his arrest, "What is happening to me," he said, "is not something unique happening to me alone. It is a broader process that is taking place all over the country. We are all aware how prominent intellectuals, lawyers, writers, poets, activists, students, leaders, they are all put into jail because they have expressed their dissent or raised questions about the ruling powers of India." He said, "We are part of the process." And Father Stan Swami died in prison in July 2021. Well, I would love to go into more detail about some of these other faces that you're seeing up here. I'll just toss out some of their names. Irfan Mehraj, a Kashmiri journalist, academic Dr. Anand Teltumde, tribal activist Hidme Markham, Kashmiri journalist Fahad Shah, Kashmiri human rights activist Khurram Parvez. Well, as I said, I would love to discuss the details of their particular cases, but in the interest of time, what I do want to leave you with is 3 points. First, these political prisoners, whose pictures 9 out of 55 listed by the USCIRF, you see their pictures up here, they are people from all walks of life. They're journalists, academics, activists. Second, notice the diversity of those imprisoned. They are disproportionately Muslim, yes, but the prisoners include Christians, Dalits, Hindus, and tribals. Lastly, almost all of these people were arrested in just the past 2 to 3 years, and every single one is held, at least in part, under this law, the UAPA. As The Guardian has reported, the use of this law, the UAPA, before Modi's government came to power in 2014 was negligible. But between 2014 and 2020, 10,552 people were arrested under the UAPA. Notably, most of the political prisoners we just discussed, and whose pictures you're seeing up here, were arrested after that 2020 date. And so we don't even have current numbers about how many people have been arrested in the past 2 years. Well, why so many? Why so many arrested like this? Well, as Human Rights Watch states, the government in India is increasingly using this counterterrorism law, the UAPA, to target its critics. The law defines terrorism in a vague and overbroad manner, reverses the presumption of innocence, allows for prolonged detention without trial or charge for up to 180 days, detention for up to 6 months without charges or trial, including up to 30 days in police custody, and it creates a strong presumption against bail. The UAPA allows the Modi regime to conduct politically motivated arrests of its critics without the need to prove any sort of criminal activity. Thus, as Human Rights Watch reports, only 2.2% of the cases registered under the law from 2016 to 2019 ended in a court conviction. This is a law which is used to suppress dissent, to imprison critics without having to bring them to trial or even slap charges against them. In short, in the words of the Human Rights Watch, the UAPA is used to keep critics locked up for years and send a chilling message to others who speak out, making the judicial process itself a tool for persecution and punishment. If India wants to preserve its status as the world's largest democracy, it needs to repeal the UAPA and release these political prisoners. And as the United States of America, being the world's oldest democracy, we must communicate to India that our shared values with that country cannot include, do not include, will never include locking people up for engaging in democratic free speech and peaceful activism. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for laying out the groundwork, especially for those of us here who don't know much about political prisoners. With that, I would like to invite USCIRF Commissioner Eric Uland to the stage.
Good afternoon, and Peter, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm Eric Uland, a commissioner at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Thank you very much to IAMC, I apologize, for coordinating the event and inviting me to speak to you today and making sure the microphone continues not to fall. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you about religious freedom and prisoners of conscience in India. We are all particularly honored to be here today with Qasim Rasu Ilyas, whose son, Umar Khalid, has bravely and unflinchingly advocated for religious minorities in India at great risk to his personal safety. Qasim, your son's advocacy is truly admirable and the highest example of why pressing for religious freedom in India remains so important. Thank you so much for being here today. As many of you know, USCIRF is an independent, bipartisan U.S. federal government body dedicated to promoting the universal right to freedom of religion or belief abroad. USCIRF seeks to defend religious freedom internationally for people of all faiths and for none. Throughout the year, we monitor religious freedom conditions abroad and make policy recommendations to the President, Department of State, and Congress. We can be a nudge, a scold, an advocate, a voice, unflinching and calling out countries that throttle the chance for free expression of faith. But we can also be a help, an advocate, a partner, and a friend to countries which live up to their commitments for religious freedom at home. USCIRF is grateful for the work all of you do, raising awareness of the challenges for religious freedom in India, and the information you develop and share all around the globe to keep a spotlight on conditions there. Your work informs the research and reporting so many of us do, including at USCIRF, and we are thankful, very grateful to all of you. Last month, USCIRF held a hearing on U.S. policy challenges related to religious freedom in India, during which commissioners raised concerns about discriminatory laws that disproportionately target religious minorities. The national government of India uses the so-called Unlawful Activities Prevention Act to conduct surveillance, harassment, and detention of people of faith. State and local governments have implemented legal restrictions in recent years that negatively impact Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Dalits, and indigenous and scheduled tribal people. Muslims and Christians are the two largest groups detained for their religious belief in India. It's clear that Indian authorities have arrested both Muslims and Christians under false claims of facilitating forced conversions, and religious clerics have been accused of arranging marriages. Laws prohibiting cow slaughter also disproportionately affect the country's Muslim, Christian, and Dalit populations and inflame mob violence against individuals accused of eating beef, killing cows, or just transporting cattle. The Indian government's detention of individuals for expressing their religious beliefs or for advocating on behalf of religious minorities has become a widespread phenomenon. And while USCIRF and you follow and report on the general trends in India against religious freedom, we all know that these violations are much more than just overall numbers. For example, activists have been detained for advocating on behalf of Dalits, as illustrated by the notable arrests in 2020 of 16 advocates in Bhima, Koregaon, where caste-based violence broke out in 2018. While many Dalits are Hindu, they often face discrimination and violence and lack of recognition in Hindu society. Among those arrested, as mentioned earlier, were Father Stan Swami, an 83-year-old Jesuit priest and tribal rights activist, and the oldest person ever accused of terrorism in the country of India. Swami's requests for bail were repeatedly denied, despite his deteriorating health, and he eventually died in custody. Terrible. USCIRF maintains a public database of individuals known to have been detained on the basis of the peaceful exercise of their freedom of religion or belief. This database, named the Frank R. Wolf Freedom of Religion or Belief Victims List, currently includes many individuals across multiple faiths in India. I'd like to talk about one of those people today, Umar Khalid. We know that India detains student activists and journalists for their religious freedom reporting and advocacy and for protesting discriminatory legislation such as the Citizenship Amendment Act. This includes Umar Khalid. As a staunch defender of religious minorities, Umar rose to prominence as a university student, peacefully protesting against the CAA. Arrested in September 2020, Umar continues to languish in jail, held under the UAPA. Umar is one of dozens of activists who have been arrested in connection with their advocacy efforts. USCIRF closely monitors the situation of all those in India on our Wolf Victims List. We raise these cases with the State Department and other entities with interest in a positive and productive relationship with India. We strongly urge policy recommendations that take these abuses seriously, especially the importance of the United States in its designation of India as a country of particular concern, or CPC, in the coming months, and not letting India off the hook from the consequences of a CPC designation with some sort of scummy waiver. When it comes to India, from restrictive laws to unjust imprisonments, all of us share a common concern and hope that India can chart a newer and better path in the years to come. We want our Wolf Victims List to go to zero for India, and India to become a real beacon for religious freedom in the world. So together, with firmness of purpose, clarity of vision, and certainty in our cause, we will fight for religious freedom as our hearts demand, Our will commands, our legs can stand, and all our voices shout. Together, united for religious freedom, we say, onward, ever onward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yulin, for those very encouraging and powerful words. I think you said it best. Accountability is something that the superpowers of the world especially need to do with India. Next, we will have Nausicaa Renner, who is the Deputy Editor of Intercept.
Hello. Thank you so much to the Indian American Muslim Council for having me. I'm here representing my colleagues Rashmi Kumar, who's the managing editor of The Intercept, and journalist Sonia Falero, who spent time with Umar Khalid's family last year and wrote a long piece about it. Since his election in 2014, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has weaponized the legal system to target anyone who criticizes his Hindu nationalist government, from students expressing critical opinions on social media to journalists reporting on the state-sanctioned violence against Muslims and other minorities, to activists rallying the masses to stand up to Modi's regime. Nonetheless, his relationship with the White House and U.S. lawmakers has only grown stronger, with Modi visiting the U.S. twice during the Biden administration, meeting with the president, and delivering a joint address to Congress. The burgeoning U.S.-India strategic partnership has further enabled Modi's efforts to erode the information ecosystem in India and shore up his hold on power in the lead up to next year's election. Among those jailed by Modi is activist Umar Khalid, who for over 3 years now has been detained without trial after being accused without evidence of being the mastermind behind deadly communal violence in Delhi in 2020, while former President Donald Trump was in India. In fact, a local leader of Modi's own political party instigated his followers to attack Muslims who were protesting against a citizenship law that discriminated against them. Khalid is one of at least 8,000 people who have been arrested under a draconian anti-terror law called the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, wielded by Modi to jail critics indefinitely. The Intercept has followed Khalid's case closely, and in the fall of 2022, award-winning journalist Sonia Falero went to Delhi to meet with Khalid's family and friends, including Khalid's father, who is with us today. Through those interviews and time spent with Khalid many years prior, Falero traces Khalid's political trajectory from his early grapplings with police violence against Muslims to his outspoken activism as a PhD student that led to his arrest on sedition charges. Despite being branded by Modi's party and the pro-government media as an enemy of the state, Khalid continued to fight for a just and democratic India. When Falero spoke with Khalid's mother, Sabiha Khanum, she told her, "My son had a bright future. He could have moved abroad, bought a nice house, a nice car. It was all within his grasp. But he said, I only want to live in India. And he's the one they call a terrorist?" I would encourage you all to read Sonia's in-depth profile of Umar Khalid, which we published this summer in partnership with the Indian news outlet Scroll.in. We have a handout with a QR code over there. The piece shows the emotional impact Khalid's imprisonment had on the people closest to him and the chilling effect of Modi's use of anti-terror laws to silence his critics. As Meenakshi Ganguly of Human Rights Watch told Falero, there's no evidence that Umar Khalid was engaged in violence. So on what grounds is the UAPA being used against him? Simply because he made statements the government disliked? In the past year, the situation for journalists and activists in India and the diaspora has only worsened. Last week, a top Indian official sanctioned prosecution against Arundhati Roy for, quote, provocative speech and the promotion of enmity. Press freedom in Kashmir has been systematically whittled away as independent journalists have been jailed under UAPA and their news websites blocked by the government. And perhaps most troubling, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of assassinating Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil, though the Canadian government has yet to share the evidence produced from their investigation. The Intercept has reported extensively on Modi's crackdown on dissidents in an effort to draw U.S. attention to the political prisoners held indefinitely without trial in India. As we've previously reported, Twitter, or X under Elon Musk, has also collaborated with the Modi government in mass censorship of dissenting views, complying with Modi's demand to remove a BBC documentary critical of the Indian Prime Minister on the platform. As the Biden administration cultivates a strategic relationship with Modi, critics see ever stronger evidence that Biden is falling short of his pledge to champion human rights around the world. As a final note, I think one of the most dangerous things about what is happening to Umar Khalid, which we are also seeing around the conflict in Israel and Gaza, is that speaking out against state power is often equated with terrorism or sympathy for terrorism. I want to read a little from our article on Khalid describing the period in 2016 when his role in organizing a vigil for a Kashmiri man was conflated with sedition by pro-Modi TV news. He appeared on Times Now, a cable news channel known for its right-wing bias, as part of a panel discussion about the vigil. "You are more dangerous to the country than Maoist terrorists," screamed Arnab Goswami, the channel's editor-in-chief at the time. "Someone is going to name you as anti-national, and I'm naming you as anti-national tonight." Khalid, struggling to get a word in over Goswami's berating, responded with a bewildered smile. Over the next few hours, other cable channels adopted the same rhetoric, describing the students as pro-Pakistan and secessionist while running clips from the event on loop. Khalid, with his Muslim name, was singled out. The channels labeled him as the event's mastermind, foreshadowing the accusations leading to his imprisonment years later, and falsely claimed that he had visited Pakistan. They called him a sympathizer of Jaish-e-Mohammed, a militant group listed by the U.S. Treasury as a terrorist organization, an accusation that the media claimed was based on an Indian government report. The government later denied the report's existence, but none of the outlets issued a retraction. When speech is equated with violence and misinformation spirals out of control, it is important for politicians in the U.S. to maintain their ability to think critically and push for freedom of speech and freedom to express political dissent. As Pankaj Mishra told The Intercept this week, things are going to get much, much worse for a whole lot of writers and journalists in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasika, for those words. Our next speaker will be Niranjan Dakle, who is an author and journalist, investigative journalist from India.
Thank you, Usna. I myself was an investigative journalist for around 20 years. But since 2014, we have been witnessing a situation which we never faced in our entire career. To describe the present situation in India very precisely, a very famous poet in India has written a poem which in Hindi, which I have translated for everybody's benefit in English. It's a very small and a very precise one. Get killed. If you are not part of this madness, if anyone speaks against us, he will be jailed. Speaking truth will earn you a bullet. It won't be tolerated at all if your shirt is brighter than theirs. Anyone with a blotless shirt will get killed. Don't surrender and be their bard. Get thrown out of the cultural sphere. Don't praise us and get killed. Don't raise the flag of religion in our mad mobs. Then bathe in a shower of bullets. You traitors, the biggest crime today is to be unarmed and innocent. If you are not a culprit, you ought to get killed. I thought these are very powerful words, and I know we are talking about how persecution has been happening for anybody who expresses his dissent against the present regime. And I am basically here to speak about my very dear friend Umar Khalid. He is in jail for the last 37 months. September 20, when he got arrested. In last 37 months, the trial has not begun, the charges have not been framed. The appeal for his bail went first to the judicial magistrate, then to the High Court, now to the Supreme Court. And in a period of 5 months, Supreme Court has adjourned hearing, giving reason of paucity of time, 6 times in 5 months. And he was arrested for giving a speech in the month of February 2020. And the government said that is an anti-national speech. It provokes violence. I just want to read out what he said in that speech. He said, when Donald Trump comes to India on the 24th Feb, we will say that the Prime Minister and the Government of India are trying to divide our country. They are destroying the values of Mahatma Gandhi, and we people of India are trying to fight against them. If those in power want to divide India, the people of India are ready to unite the country. We don't respond to violence with violence. We won't respond to hate with hatred. If they spread hate, we will respond with love. If they thrash us with sticks, we will keep holding our national tricolor flag high. Now, I just don't understand what is anti-national in this speech. What is it that is provoking violence? He is clearly saying that we will not respond to violence by violence. We will not respond to hate by hatred. But on this speech, these frivolous charges and allegations were raised against him, and he has been incarcerated in jail for the last 37 months. Imagine a PhD graduate. He is a doctor. Dr. Umar Khalid is in jail for the last 37 months, and the Supreme Court of India is not ready to even hear to the bail petitions, giving reason of paucity of time. His co-accused in the same case, Natasha Narwal, Devangana Kalita and Asif Tanha, they all have got bailed. It is only Umar Khalid, he is still facing this incarceration. During this period, 2 Supreme Court judges recused from hearing. So, the appointment for the next judge had to be waited for. High Court had granted him bail after 2.5 years. And today everybody is talking about CA, NRC. Umar was protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Act. And why this happens is, 100 years ago, the proponent of this ideology and the chief of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, Golwalkar, had written in a book which is considered as a Bible for the right-wing organizations in India. He wrote that Muslims and Christians are the bloodsuckers. They will not get any special rights. They will have to either assimilate and merge with the majority community, or they will have to live at the mercy of the majority community. And as a result of that ideology, articulated 100 years ago, this government brought CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, to deny citizenship to people based on religion. And this is completely anti-constitutional, for which Umar Khalid and his friends and colleagues were protesting. We have seen the downfall of every pillar of Indian democracy, be it legislation, be it executive or judiciary. I myself had done a story about the murder of a judge in which the present Home Minister of India was the main accused. And 15 days after the murder of the judge, the accused was discharged. But this has happened and we are facing it. I just want to reiterate and stress on this point that a country of 1.4 billion people going fascist will be the biggest loss for democracy in this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Niranjan. Before our last and final speaker, I ask that due to the sensitivity of Umar Khalid's case and just, for security for the family and to just not affect his case in any way, that nobody take pictures or record while his father, Mr. Qasim Rasul Ilyas, is speaking to us. No, you can still record.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am grateful to Indian American Muslim Council for giving me this opportunity to say something regarding my son Umar Khalid. India has many unique things. It is the largest democracy of the world, a population of 140 billion people, a multi-religious, multicultural and multilinguistic society, a country which has preaches ahimsa, that is non-violence, for the world. I did not come here to represent the case of my son, Umar Khalid, only. I came here to represent the case of all the political prisoners, those who are languishing in jail. I don't know, speaking here, what will happen, how far it will affect the case in India, but I think the people must know what is prevailing in the country. India is the largest democracy of the world, but we are afraid that whether it will remain as a democracy or not after 2024 election. If this government comes back, people feel that the democracy of the country will be lost. Nowadays in India, dissent had become a crime. Many friends of Umar Khalid, those who are languishing in jail, what was their fault? They have spoken against a discriminatory law, that is CAA, citizenship law. They were the face of this anti-CAA movement of the country. And they have been charged with sedition, they have been charged with terrorism, and they are languishing in jail since last 3 years under UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This is the terrorist act. What was the fault? If you go through the entire charge sheet of Umar Khalid, you will see that there are 3 charge sheets so far submitted. The first charge sheet has 17,000 pages, then second charge sheet and third charge sheet. There are all fabricated things in the charge sheet. They have cited, as Takles was saying, that he made a speech. That speech is the main charge against Umar Khalid, which says that that speech has instigated a communal riot in Delhi. And they have given one simple sentence that Umar Khalid says that when Mr. Trump will visit India, we will bring before him what is going on in the country. That means they have given the indication that they will instigate a riot in Delhi. My lawyer asked the police, have you covered that speech? They said no. We got it from a Republic TV, a TV channel. We got it from there. Then they asked the Republic TV, from where you got this sentence? Have you covered this speech? They said no. We have got it from Amit Malviya's tweet. Amit Malviya is a IT in charge of BJP. Then my lawyer has shown the entire video of 20 minutes and asked him what is wrong in it. Just now Mr. Takle was giving the details of that speech. Actually, And you know that in spite of all this, that all fabricated charges are there. But when we apply for bail in lower case, it has taken 1.5 years for the argument. Because in UAPA, we have to prove that we are not guilty, even in bail. For bail, we have to prove that we are not guilty. It is not otherwise. The police has to prove. It is not otherwise. So after 1.5 years, the one line's judgment was prima facie there is a case. Then we have moved to High Court. After 9 months, again they say the same thing. And you know, since last 5-6 months, we are in Apex Court of India. So far, 6th adjournment has taken place. So what I'm saying is that now process has become a punishment. If you keep a person, if you say the prima facie case is there, and you know in Unlawful Activities Act, you can keep a person for 5 years, 10 years, and after that you will say that no, he will be acquitted. So a person will lose his 10 precious years. And you know Umar Khalid, from the beginning itself, when he was a student of Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is a prestigious university in India, from there he was actively involved in the issues of all the persecuted people, whether it is Dalit, tribals, and his PhD thesis, title of the PhD thesis was on the tribals of Jharkhand. And he was a person, and his organization, during JNU times, they have cited the plight of Kashmiri people, what is happening to them, Kashmir, with the title that a country without post office. Again, he has been charged, and he has been charged sedition, that he was raising this type of issues. What I'm saying is that the situation in the country is becoming very miserable for the people, those who talk to the government, those who speak to the government, those who protest against the discriminatory policies and laws of the government, whether they are journalists or they are activists, even the politicians. So this is the situation prevailing in the country, and we hope now all the other political parties, they are coming on one platform, because they also feel that if they did not win this election, then what will be their plight? They don't know. So this time, all the political parties came on one platform, and they form an India alliance. And we hope that the vote will not be divided, the good sense will prevail, and finally they will be defeated. Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Mr. Elias, for joining us, for coming out this way, for talking about your son. I think I speak for all of us in this room when I say that we hope Umar will be free and back home with your family. And I want to thank everyone who came here to learn about this. In case you were not able to hear towards the back of the room, we will have this up on our Indian American Muslim Council YouTube page later today or tomorrow. So please check that and share it. Before we go, I just wanted to thank all of our co-sponsors for this event: Genocide Watch, World Without Genocide, Indian American Muslim Council, Hindus for Human Rights, Dalit Solidarity Forum, New York State Council of Churches, Justice for All, Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations of North America, India Civil Watch International, Center for Pluralism, International Commission for Dalit Rights, American Muslim Institution, International Society for Peace and Justice, North American Manipur Tribal Association, and the Association of Indian Muslims of America. Thank you again, once again, for coming. Please help yourself to lunch. Please take some with you for your colleagues. We appreciate you coming, and we hope to see you at future briefings. Thank you.